Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are really diving into something incredibly critical, globally critical, actually. It's about the strategic need to elevate female African leaders. And, with things like the UN General Assembly coming up, the source material we've looked at argues this isn't just about fairness anymore. It's basically a global strategy we can't ignore. So, our mission today, for you listening, is pretty clear. We're pulling together the evidence that shows empowering African women in leadership isn't charity. It's actually framed as the strategic investment right now. Investment in democracy, yeah, but also in innovation and ultimately in just keeping things stable globally.
Resilience.
Exactly. And to really get the weight of this, we have to go beyond just talk. We're going to break down the actual impacts, the measurable stuff, across key areas like peacekeeping, health, education, even climate. We need to see why the sources are calling this specific focus, this leadership pipeline, the best resilience strategy available. We're looking for the proof, the results. Okay, let's unpack that. Starting with maybe the sheer scale of the opportunity. It seems to be all about demographics initially. Sub-Saharan Africa is set to be the fastest growing region globally, and that growth is driven by this huge wave of young people.
Yeah, the demographic angle is, it's fundamental. The numbers themselves tell a story about future leadership. Right now, you've got something like 145 million adolescent girls across the region. That's already a massive force, politically, economically.
But it's the projection that really jumped out at me from the reading.
Right. Look ahead just a few decades, middle of the century. That number, girls under 18, it's expected to explode to around 465 million.
465 million.
Yeah,
Huh?
nearly 500 million young women. Think about them entering leadership roles, the workforce, civic life.
So practically speaking, what does that massive number signal for governance for the future?
It signals that Africa's future leaders are this rising generation, and women and girls. They're a huge growing slice of that pie. So what is pretty stark? If you ignore or sideline or just fail to invest in that talent pool, you're not just being wasteful. You're actively risking the stability and growth of the whole region. And that impacts everyone globally. So focusing on female leadership isn't optional. It's just essential for future stability. It's baseline.
Okay, so the demographics set the stage. Let's get to the proof points then, the results. How does female leadership actually change things in key areas? Peace and security first. The sources say security is never gender neutral.
That quote is vital. It forces us to see that conflict hits different groups differently. So the solutions have to involve everyone too, and we see this playing out. Female peacekeepers, mediators, negotiators, they're crucial on the continent. You look at countries like Ethiopia, Ghana, Rwanda. They're among the world's biggest contributors of female peacekeepers.
Right. And why do they make such a difference? What do women bring to those volatile situations that maybe traditional forces don't?
Well, the sources point to a couple of big things. First is trust. Female peacekeepers can often connect with communities, especially women and children, in ways armed men can't. They gather intelligence, build confidence. That can actually prevent violence. Second is bridge building and negotiations. Women bring these gender-aware perspectives. They make sure peace deals cover things like justice after conflict, land rights, economic chances for everyone, not just the fighters. It's about building a peace that lasts.
So that's conflict. What about big crises, like, say, global health emergencies? Pandemics, yeah, the pattern holds. It's really consistent. There's a clear link. Where women lead, health outcomes improve. Maternal mortality drops. Child health gets better.
It seems to be about shifting priorities towards, community care, prevention.
And we saw that very clearly with COVID-19, didn't we?
Absolutely. The sources really highlight this. During the pandemic, some of the most effective national responses in Africa came from female leaders. They were quick to mobilize local health workers. They figured out the logistics to get vaccines to rural areas. And crucially, on the world stage, they were vocal, demanding fair access to vaccines, to resources. Their leadership seemed focused on protecting the most vulnerable, which builds resilience long term.
Okay, so that's crisis response. What about the long game? Education, good governance. We know millions more girls are in school now, especially in Eastern and Southern Africa.
And that's not an accident, right? It's driven by leaders who make equity a priority. Female leaders, the evidence shows, consistently push for safe schools, they invest in teachers, and really champion getting girls into STEM fields, science, technology. It's not just about fairness today, it's about building the capacity to solve tomorrow's really complex problems.
And the structure of government itself can be telling. Rwanda comes up a lot in the sources, their parliament.
Rwanda is, well, it's pretty remarkable. Over 60% women in parliament. That's a global benchmark. And it proves the point. When you actually build the structures, the policies to support women getting into leadership, it works. You get a democracy that's more inclusive. And that tends to lead to more stable peace, smarter decisions about resources. Inclusion isn't just nice, it makes governance stronger.
Okay, so this feels like the turning point. We see the impact. Now, how do we move from just acknowledging success to actually systematically building that pipeline for the future?
Right, and this is where it gets really practical and quite interesting. The sources detail this specific project. The African Women's House being built in Liberia. It's led by the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf Presidential Center for Women in Development. And that's the first of its kind, right? Yeah, described as the very first dedicated space, physical space, institutional support specifically for nurturing and amplifying female public leaders from all over Africa. And the scope is broad, not just future presidents. It's about building the whole chain, from community activists and mayors right up to, yes, heads of state, but also the technical experts, public health leaders, climate negotiators, peace mediators.
That focus on technical skills feels really important. It's not just getting women a seat at the table, but making sure they have the specific expertise needed: climate science, public health admin, negotiation tactics for today's problems. Precisely. And this is where we have to land on that core message from the sources, the one that really reframes the whole issue. This is not charity. It is a strategic investment in democracy, innovation, and resilience. Think about the global situation. Climate change getting worse, pandemic risks, digital gaps, some governments becoming more authoritarian. In that context, the sources argue focusing on young female African leaders isn't just a strategy, it's potentially the best resilient strategy we have available. Let's push on strategic investment for a second. Funders often do programmatic funding, right? Short-term projects. How is structural investment different here?
That's a great question. Structural investment, as described here, means getting away from those short project cycles. It means committing long-term predictable funding to the institutions themselves, like the African Women's House. Institutions built to train and support leaders over decades, not just for one grant cycle. It's about funding the actual infrastructure of leadership development, making sure it lasts beyond political changes, focusing on stability. Okay, so what's the takeaway for the big international players? The institutions, the policymakers setting global agendas? The message seems pretty urgent. Don't wait.
Yeah, the actions called for are specific. They're about removing the blockages in the system. First, invest seriously in institutions that train women for those specific technical roles: the climate scientists, the health administrators, the local government experts.
And it's not just training, it's also about actively changing the rules, right? Supporting policies that tear down the barriers, discriminatory hiring, unfair election rules that stop women getting into the pipeline to begin with. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the money needs to flow effectively.
Right.
Directly to women-led organizations already doing the work on the ground. That's critical. Plus, international bodies need to look inwards, put more African women on their own boards, panels, diplomatic teams, move beyond just asking their opinion to actually including them in decision-making.
So the conversation at places like the UN shouldn't just be congratulations on progress made, but a real demand for concrete structural changes going forward.
It's presented as exactly that, a crossroads moment. Time for, as the sources put it, fewer speeches and more structural investment. If we're serious about global risks like climate change or the next pandemic, we have to empower the people who've proven effective at building resilience locally and distributing resources fairly. It's about stabilizing communities, yes, but also making global governance work better.
Yeah.
Which brings us right back to that central idea. When African women lead, priorities shift. Well-being, community health, fair access, long-term thinking, these things get valued more, leading to better development overall.
Right. And, if knowledge is meant to be applied, then this forces us all, the whole global community, to face a pretty stark fact. We can't solve any of the planet's huge interconnected problems, climate, health, inequality, with only half the population leading the charge. The evidence seems clear. The investment, the sources argue, is therefore essential, a really powerful way to frame it.
Yeah.
So for you listening, if this investment in young female African leaders truly is the best resilience strategy we've got right now, the question to chew on is,
Where else are we missing similar evidence-backed strategic investment that could boost stability for everyone?
Thanks for joining us for the deep dive.